In the summer of 2008, three close friends set out on a thrilling diving adventure off the coast of California, unaware they were about to vanish without a trace. 9 months later, a shocking discovery beneath the waves would stun the coast. Guard and uncover chilling secrets that someone was desperate to hide. What really happened during that fateful dive? And who would risk everything to find the truth? It was a perfect summer morning in Newport Beach, California, the kind of day that made you feel alive. The sunlight shimmered playfully on the calm waves, and the harbor buzzed softly with laughter, music, and the distant hum of boat engines. It was August 3rd, 2008, and the summer felt endless. On the edge of the marina, three friends prepared eagerly for their adventure. Alex Mitchell, known for his easy charisma and infectious laughter, adjusted his diving gear nervously, his eyes darting toward the horizon as if searching for something no one else could see. Sarah Bennett smiled gently, inspecting her underwater camera carefully, her vibrant red hair catching the sun's rays, framing her face in golden hues. Felipe Santos was recording everything on his small video camera, his smile broad and genuine. A young man embracing every second of his dreams. Today's dive, Felipe narrated into the camera, his accent soft yet clear. We'll explore the infamous Pacific Abyss. It's dangerous, it's thrilling, and with Alex leading, what could possibly go wrong? Felipe laughed at his own joke, turning the camera toward his friends. Sarah rolled her eyes playfully, while Alex gave a strained smile, his fingers fiddling anxiously with a small antique compass hanging around his neck. Something was off about Alex today, though neither Sarah nor Felipe seemed to notice immediately. He kept glancing over his shoulder, tension tightening his shoulders with every passing minute. As they boarded the boat, Felipe pointed his camera toward the horizon. "This is paradise," he said softly, capturing the serene view of Newport Beach fading behind them. The blue expanse ahead seemed infinite. Out at sea, their friendship felt timeless. The tension eased momentarily as Sarah recounted stories from previous dives, laughing warmly, her enthusiasm contagious. Alex finally relaxed, smiling more naturally as Felipe joked about discovering sunken treasure. For a moment, their worries felt distant, but the lightness didn't last. As they approached the dive spot, Alex's expression darkened again. He stared into the deep blue water as if hypnotized. Sarah noticed the shift and gently touched his arm. "You okay, Alex?" He snapped from his trance, forcing another smile. "Yeah, just a little nervous. This spot's always unpredictable." Sarah squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "We're a team." "We got your back." Felipe joined them, camera in hand. "Ready?" he asked eagerly, unaware of Alex's hidden turmoil. Alex gave a sharp nod, stepping toward the edge. "Let's do this," he whispered. The trio dove into the sea, sinking gracefully beneath the waves. Above them, their small boat bobbed gently, anchored securely. Underwater, the world shifted entirely. Vibrant coral formations, schools of colorful fish, and the breathtaking clarity made Sarah's eyes widen behind her mask, her camera capturing it all. Felipe swam beside her, excitedly signaling whenever he spotted something remarkable. Alex, however, remained distant, his attention scattered, his eyes continuously darting around as if fearing something would emerge from the shadows. Hours passed on shore, and by evening, worry began to set in at the marina. Their rented boat, spotted drifting aimlessly miles from their dive location, was found empty with no signs of the three friends. Authorities arrived quickly, lights piercing through the dusk as they searched for any clues. Helicopters hovered, boats scoured the area, but no trace was found. The ocean, calm and welcoming that morning, now seemed cold and indifferent. The news of their disappearance spread rapidly, gripping the local community and capturing national headlines. Television reporters flocked to Newport Beach, delivering emotional updates hour by hour, speculation mingling with desperation. Families waited anxiously for news, their hopes dimming with each passing day. After 2 exhausting weeks, the official search began to lose momentum. Authorities, under public pressure and unable to find further leads, quietly shifted their narrative. They suggested equipment failure or perhaps dangerous currents had tragically claimed the divers. The police concluded their investigation hastily, labeling it an unfortunate accident and closing the case. For Marcos Santos, Felipe's older brother, this wasn't enough. He refused to accept the police report. Marcos, a former Brazilian Navy officer who had raised Felipe single-handedly after their parents' death, knew his brother better than anyone. Felipe wouldn't have made a reckless mistake like that. Marcos decided he couldn't just wait. He had to find answers himself. Week after week, Marcos rented a small boat, diving repeatedly in the waters where Felipe and his friends had vanished. Each dive ended in frustration, each return to shore deepening his sense of hopelessness. Still, he persisted, driven by sheer determination. On a cold morning in late October, Marcos stood on the edge of the rented boat, his tired eyes scanning the water's surface. It had been months of painful dead ends. He checked his equipment. Mechanically, his father's old military watch strapped tightly around his wrist, a habit from his time in the Navy. Comforting yet painful. Taking a deep breath, Marcos plunged into the ocean once again, descending slowly into the darkness below. The ocean floor was familiar now. He recognized certain formations, patches of coral, rocks shaped like sleeping giants. Today, though, something felt different. As he approached one of the abandoned boats found drifting weeks ago, now resting sadly at the ocean bottom, a sense of dread tightened his chest. Swimming closer, his eyes widened behind his mask. Something small glinted faintly, wedged between a broken seat and rusted railing. Marcos reached for it carefully, his fingers trembling. Pulling it free, his heart nearly stopped. In his palm lay a small antique compass, the exact one Alex always wore, only now it was smeared with dried blood. Marcos felt a rush of cold fear enveloping him. His pulse quickened, echoing loudly inside his head. He knew instantly this was no ordinary accident. He stared at the compass, gripping it tightly, the ocean's silence pressing around him. For the first time, he felt closer to understanding the truth, and the truth terrified him. The weeks following Marcos' chilling discovery blurred into a relentless pattern of hope, despair, and persistent searching. Each morning began before dawn, Marcos sailing alone from Newport Beach toward the dark expanse known as the Pacific. Abyss, this underwater canyon, deep and uncharted, was now an obsession for him, every dive carrying him deeper into frustration and sorrow. The ocean floor became a familiar nightmare. Endless rocks, corals, and empty shadows where answers refused to appear. But Marcos couldn't let go, not when that bloodied antique compass haunted his dreams. He knew instinctively Alex's compass meant trouble, possibly betrayal. Each dive felt heavier, lonelier, more desperate in those endless hours beneath the day. Waves, memories flooded Marcos. Images of their difficult childhood in Brazil flashed vividly. He remembered their small apartment in Salvador, walls cracked and damp, meals sparse. He'd taken responsibility for Felipe at 12 years old, becoming not just a brother, but a guardian. Felipe's smiling face, innocent and full of dreams, often broke through the darkness underwater, reminding Marcos why he had to keep going. After another fruitless dive, Marcos returned to the harbor feeling crushed. The authorities had long stopped pretending to help. They greeted him now with pitying glances, dismissive shrugs. To them, the case was closed, 3 divers tragically lost. End of story. Anger simmered inside Marcos, intensifying with each passing day. He couldn't believe how quickly they'd abandoned hope, how quickly they'd abandoned Philippe. One evening, while drying his gear at the marina, Marcos overheard a name from an old dock worker, Jenna Cole. The man spoke of a former detective living in quiet isolation near Newport. Rumors said she was the best but had quit after something tragic. Marcos had little to lose. He decided to seek her out. Jenna Cole's home was modest, almost hidden among trees on the outskirts of town. Marcos hesitated, then knocked firmly. After a long pause, Jenna appeared, short gray hair framing piercing blue eyes. Her expression was guarded, suspicious. "I don't do investigations anymore," Jenna stated firmly, sensing Marcos' purpose. Immediately, Marcos held out the compass silently, dried blood still visible. Jenna's expression shifted subtly from annoyance to intrigue. "Please," Marcos said quietly, "this belonged to one of them. My brother is still down there. Something terrible happened." Jenna hesitated, conflicted. Inside her home, framed photographs told a quiet story, a smiling younger Jenna beside a confident partner. Memories of a career once meaningful ended abruptly by tragedy. She took the compass cautiously. "Where did you find this?" "In their abandoned boat." "Authorities claim accident, but this can't be right," Marcos answered, his voice barely hiding desperation. Jenna turned the compass slowly, examining the dried blood. Her instincts stirred, something she hadn't felt in years. Yet the haunting face of her former partner, Mark, stopped her cold. Mark had been killed during their last investigation, a tragic case she'd blamed herself for ever since. "I can't," Jenna murmured, handing the compass back. "I'm sorry." Marcos met her eyes squarely. "If it was your brother out there, would you walk away?" The words struck deeply. Jenna sighed, defeated by the sincerity in Marcos' voice. "Come inside," she finally relented. Over strong coffee, Marcos recounted every detail of his search, Felipe's optimism, Alex's unusual anxiety, and Sarah's dedication to environmental causes. Jenna listened intently, jotting down notes, sketching details in her small notebook, habit Marcos found peculiar yet oddly comforting. "We need to start at the abyss," Jenna finally concluded. "Tomorrow." At sunrise, Marcos and Jenna navigated toward the Pacific abyss. Marcos guided Jenna through the murky depths, watching her meticulous and methodical approach. Each underwater rock, crevice, or scattered debris held her attention. Hours passed with no luck until Jenna signaled abruptly, pointing urgently to a shadowy formation below. Marcos' heart quickened as he followed her down, the light from their lamps slicing through the darkness. As they descended further, Marcos' blood turned icy. There, wedged grotesquely between jagged rocks, was a human figure. It was Sarah Bennett. Her body, pale and hauntingly still, seemed frozen in a grim dance with the sea. Her red hair drifted eerily in the water, the camera she always carried strapped to her wrist. Marcos fought waves of nausea as Jenna carefully documented the scene. Sarah's wrist bore clear marks, bruises suggesting a violent struggle, evidence impossible to ignore. Back ashore, Marcos and Jenna approached authorities with new evidence, only to be met again by cold indifference. "Tragic drowning," a detective stated dismissively. "Currents down there are brutal. Nothing suspicious." Jenna seethed silently, sensing deep flaws in the investigation. She pulled Marcos aside, her eyes blazing. "This isn't incompetence," she whispered sharply. "This is deliberate negligence," Marcos nodded gravely. "What now?" Jenna opened her notebook, revealing intricate sketches, Sarah's body, the bruises, the compass, each piece fitting a troubling puzzle. "We find out who benefits from silencing." This, she murmured decisively. Over the following days, Marcos and Jenna delved into Sarah's life, quietly visiting friends and colleagues. Most spoke kindly, portraying Sarah as passionate and fearless, but no one offered clues until Jenna unearthed a forgotten email trail on Sarah's laptop. The emails spoke cryptically of evidence and dangerous exposures, leading Jenna to a hidden file filled with photos and detailed notes. Sarah had secretly documented severe environmental violations near Newport Beach, illegal dumping of hazardous chemicals by a prominent local corporation. Names of influential politicians and businessmen appeared, deeply troubling connections, suggesting cover-ups and intimidation. Jenna stared at the findings, stunned. Sarah wasn't just diving, she said gravely. She was building a case, a dangerous one. Marcos absorbed this revelation in silence, connecting dots painfully. Alex. He was nervous that morning. Could he have known? Jenna hesitated. Or he was involved somehow, she added softly, the realization heavy between them. The air grew thick, tension palpable. Marcos felt torn. Alex was Felipe's friend, but evidence suggested betrayal. Jenna's eyes darkened with memories of her lost partner, reminding her painfully that trust was fragile and often misplaced. Determined to confront the truth, Jenna discreetly copied Sarah's files, hiding the drive safely. "This goes beyond your brother, Marcos," she whispered gravely. "This involves people who'll stop at nothing to remain hidden." Marcos nodded, a mixture of anger, sorrow, and resolve crossing his face. He knew Jenna was right. The depth of this conspiracy terrified him, but he wouldn't stop, not now, not ever. That night, alone in her quiet house, Jenna studied Sarah's evidence intently, her mind racing. One email stood out vividly, sent just days before Sarah vanished. "I have undeniable proof. They know I'm onto them. If anything happens, the truth must come out." Jenna leaned back, heart pounding. Sarah Bennett had uncovered something explosive. And now Jenna understood. Marco's desperate search for his brother was only the surface of a dark abyss filled with dangerous secrets. She couldn't walk away, not again. She closed her eyes, memories of Mark flooding back, the case that ended in tragedy because she'd underestimated its danger. This time she'd be ready. This time, she vowed silently, justice would prevail. In the early morning hours following her discovery, Jenna sat at her cluttered kitchen table, coffee untouched and cold, eyes fixed on Sarah Bennett's laptop. The night was fading into dawn, but Jenna barely noticed. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments of Sarah's dangerous investigation. Jenna knew Sarah hadn't just uncovered environmental violations. She'd stumbled onto a ruthless network trafficking valuable maritime artifacts. Powerful people in Newport Beach, politicians, business leaders, and even local police were tangled deep within the criminal web. Sarah had become a serious threat. Jenna spent days quietly contacting Sarah's friends and coworkers, each interview clouded in anxiety. Many spoke reluctantly, their eyes darting nervously around cafes and parks. They hinted that Sarah had grown fearful toward the end. One colleague, a nervous marine biologist named Rachel, finally opened up at a secluded diner. Sarah was scared, Rachel whispered, hands trembling around her coffee cup. She said she'd gone too far. She'd found proof that local figures were stealing shipwreck artifacts, priceless antiques, selling them illegally overseas. Jenna's heart raced. Did Sarah mention names? Rachel hesitated, her voice dropping further. Only that Alex Mitchell might have been connected. Alex, Jenna repeated, hiding her surprise. Yes, Rachel confirmed. Sarah trusted Alex, but in the final days, she suspected he had serious debts with dangerous people. Jenna left the diner feeling colder than ever. Alex's role in this dark puzzle was becoming clearer and more troubling. She immediately called Marcos, arranging to meet at his modest home by the marina. Marcos looked exhausted, his eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. He welcomed Jenna in, sensing her urgency. "What did you find?" he asked quietly. Jenna explained Rachel's revelation slowly, carefully watching Marcos' reaction. His eyes darkened, anger mixing with hurt. "Philippe trusted Alex completely," Marcos murmured bitterly. "He saw Alex as a mentor." Jenna studied Marcos thoughtfully. Did Philippe ever mention doubts about Alex? Marcos hesitated, then suddenly remembered something crucial. He hurried to Philippe's room, untouched since his disappearance. After a tense search through old belongings, Marcos found an unmarked videotape. Heart pounding, they played it. The screen flickered, revealing Philippe's familiar, hopeful face, now clouded by worry. "Something isn't right," Philippe confessed nervously. "Alex has been secretive, stressed. I overheard phone calls mentioning debts and dangerous people. I think Alex is involved in something illegal. I'm scared. Sarah suspects it too. If something happens to us, please find the truth." The recording ended abruptly. Marcos stood frozen, grief and rage burning inside him. Jenna gently placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We need to go back to the abyss," Marcos said, voice trembling but determined. "The answers are there." The next morning, their boat sliced through rough waves toward the Pacific abyss. Clouds gathered ominously overhead, mirroring their unease. Jenna checked her gear repeatedly, anxiety tightening her chest. Marcos stared into the distance, silent and focused. Suddenly, Jenna noticed a vessel trailing them, small, dark, and closing rapidly. Her pulse quickened. "Marcos," she whispered. "Urgently, we have company." Marcos glanced back sharply, fear gripping him as the mysterious boat drew closer. They maneuvered desperately, but the pursuers matched their every move. "Get ready," Marcos shouted over the roaring waves. The approaching boat's engine roared louder, pulling dangerously close. Menacing figures aboard shouted aggressively, warning Marcos and Jenna to abandon their search. Jenna grasped the helm tightly, steering skillfully through violent swells, barely avoiding collision. The chase intensified, waves crashing violently around them. Just when escape seemed impossible, Marcos skillfully guided their boat into a shallow reef area, forcing their attackers to halt abruptly to avoid wreckage. Marcos and Jenna used this narrow chance, racing ahead until the threatening vessel vanished behind the stormy horizon. Shaken but alive, Jenna and Marcos anchored near the abyss. Underwater, tension clung thickly as they descended cautiously, lights illuminating shadows that seemed darker than ever. Fear pressed around them, their senses heightened by adrenaline. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the water, and powerful currents shifted violently, nearly knocking Jenna against jagged coral. Marcos grabbed her instinctively, steadying her just in time. Looking up, their hearts sank. The boat above was circling slowly, its occupants dropping weighted objects, intentionally creating dangerous turbulence to trap them. Frantically, they navigated through swirling debris, narrowly avoiding deadly collisions with rocks and coral. Jenna's air tank snagged sharply against a hidden ledge, ripping open a small but critical tear. Her breathing became shallow and strained, panic flickering in her eyes. Marcos swiftly switched his emergency regulator, sharing air while guiding Jenna upward through the chaos, barely managing to reach their boat alive. On shore, authorities once again ignored their reports of the attack, dismissing them coldly as paranoia. Marco's frustration erupted, furious at their deliberate indifference. Jenna, however, remained silent, observing carefully. Something was profoundly wrong. Back at Jenna's house, exhaustion and frustration enveloped them. Jenna silently made coffee while Marcos paced anxiously, unable to find calm. "I won't lose my brother like this," Marcos declared, voice thick with emotion. "We need undeniable proof." Jenna nodded slowly. "Then we have to dig deeper." As Marcos rested, Jenna meticulously re-examined Sarah's laptop, searching desperately through encrypted folders, hoping to find overlooked clues. Hours slipped by until finally, hidden deep inside an audio file labeled innocuously as Project Notes, Jenna uncovered something explosive. The audio crackled, voices distorted, yet recognizable one distinctly Alex Mitchell's. "I've handled everything," Alex said coldly. "Sarah and Philippe are becoming huge problems. They know too much. It's time to resolve this permanently." A deeper, threatening voice responded chillingly. "Then do it. No loose ends." Jenna's blood froze. Her fingers trembled as the weight of Alex's betrayal sank in fully. Marcos had trusted Alex. Philippe had admired him. Now Jenna understood the horrifying truth clearly. Alex was deeply involved, perhaps directly responsible for what had happened to Sarah and possibly Philippe. She glanced toward Marcos, peacefully asleep on the couch, and felt overwhelming dread. How could she reveal this betrayal without breaking him completely? Jenna realized they had stepped into waters far darker and deeper than she'd ever imagined. Powerful people wanted them silenced, their truth buried forever beneath the ocean. Jenna closed her eyes briefly, memories flooding painfully back. Mark, her lost partner, betrayed and murdered because she underestimated danger, exactly like this. But Jenna had changed. Determined now more than ever, she resolved to fight, no matter the cost. Justice wouldn't escape again. She took a deep breath, preparing herself for the hardest conversation she'd ever faced. Marcos deserved the truth. Philippe deserved justice. They all deserved answers. Jenna knew this fight would be dangerous, perhaps deadly, but retreat was impossible now. Justice, she silently vowed once more, would prevail. The old, rugged Jeep rattled along the narrow dirt roads, winding deeper into the remote heart of Baja California. Marcos stared silently out the window, eyes heavy from exhaustion, thoughts swirling relentlessly around Felipe. Jenna drove cautiously, her grip tight on the worn steering wheel. Both knew they were entering dangerous territory, hunting shadows in a land where secrets disappeared as swiftly as the tide. Their journey to Mexico had been swift and urgent, triggered by Jenna's chilling discovery of Alex Mitchell's involvement. The secret audio recording still echoed painfully in Marco's mind, each word a sharp betrayal. They arrived late afternoon at Ensenada, a small coastal town known among locals as a hub for black market antiquities. Ancient artifacts salvaged illegally from shipwrecks regularly exchanged hands here, hidden beneath the surface charm of lively markets and bustling cafes. Tourists wandered obliviously, unaware of the darker undercurrents. Jenna and Marcos checked into a modest inn, keeping a low profile. Jenna's fluent Spanish allowed her to blend effortlessly among locals, gaining subtle insights through casual conversations in marketplaces and taverns. Marcos, however, struggled quietly with mounting frustration, language barriers intensifying his sense of isolation. By evening, they moved cautiously into a rundown district near the harbor, an area whispered to host secret dealings. Streets were narrow and dimly lit, lined with faded buildings and suspicious eyes that followed their every move. Jenna whispered softly, "Stay close, Marcos. We can't afford mistakes." Inside a dimly lit cantina, Jenna discreetly questioned, patrons about maritime artifacts. Most remained guarded, exchanging wary glances before falling silent. One elderly bartender finally murmured a name: Diego Alvarez, a known smuggler operating from a warehouse nearby. Heart racing. Marcos and Jenna approached Alvarez's hidden warehouse, the air thick with salt and tension. Jenna signaled caution as they slipped quietly inside. Boxes of stolen artifacts lined shadowed walls, ancient relics awaiting illegal transport. Voices drifted softly from deeper within, drawing them forward carefully. Diego Alvarez stood among crates, inspecting items. With rough-looking associates, Marcos, overwhelmed by desperation, abruptly stepped forward. "Where's Alex Mitchell?" Marcos demanded sharply, voice echoing. Diego spun around startled, eyes narrowing dangerously. "Who are you?" Jenna reached swiftly for Marcos, warning in her gaze, but Marcos ignored her caution. "My brother Philippe disappeared with Alex. You know something." Diego smiled coldly, nodding slowly. "Ah, Philippe. Alex talked about him." "Shame about your brother." Marcos lunged angrily, fists clenched. But Diego's men reacted swiftly, restraining him roughly. Diego approached closely, face inches from Marcos. "You're in dangerous waters. You should leave before you drown." Jenna quickly interjected, voice firm but cautious. "We only want information. We're not police." Diego regarded her thoughtfully, then finally signaled his men to release Marcos. "Alex owed many debts," Diego said quietly, almost sympathetically. "But he had powerful friends. Be careful where you step. The water is deep here." Shaken, Jenna and Marcos returned silently to their inn. Marcos sat heavily, hands trembling. Jenna touched his shoulder gently. "We're close, Marcos. Don't lose hope." Late that night, unable to sleep, Marcos stared blankly at the ceiling. Memories of Alex flashed painfully through his mind, subtle clues he'd overlooked, warning signs he'd dismissed. He remembered vividly an argument he'd once overheard between Sarah and Alex. Sarah's voice had trembled with fear, accusing Alex of involvement with dangerous criminals. Alex had snapped back violently, threatening consequences if she interfered. Marcos had dismissed it then. Now it haunted him deeply. The next day brought unexpected hope. As Jenna discreetly questioned market vendors again, an elderly fisherman overheard Felipe's name. He approached hesitantly, face weathered and sincere. "I saw Felipe," he whispered urgently. "About 2 weeks after they say he disappeared. He was frightened, hiding. I offered help, but he ran." Marco's breath caught painfully. Alive? Felipe was alive? The fisherman nodded solemnly. "He fled toward San Rafael, a tiny village inland. Perhaps he's still there." Emotion surged within Marco's hope, clashing fiercely with despair. Jenna squeezed his hand reassuringly, sensing his turmoil. "We must go," she insisted gently. Their journey inland took them deeper into Mexico's rugged landscape, roads becoming narrower, the scenery more desolate. San Rafael appeared suddenly, nestled in a secluded valley. Tiny homes clustered quietly under the shadow of rocky hills. They entered cautiously, feeling eyes watching curiously from doorways and windows. Villagers regarded strangers warily, cautious smiles masking suspicion. Jenna spoke softly, her voice gentle and reassuring, asking if anyone had seen Felipe Santos. Initially, villagers remained cautious, shaking their heads dismissively. Then, an elderly woman stepped forward hesitantly, her eyes reflecting deep sadness. "Felipe passed through here," she admitted quietly. "Months ago." He looked afraid, always glancing behind him. Marcos stepped forward desperately, voice breaking slightly. "Please, where did he go? Was he hurt?" The woman shook her head uncertainly. "I don't know. He vanished quickly." But another man came recently quiet, hiding under a false name. He seemed afraid too. Jenna leaned closer, heart pounding. This man, what was his name? He called himself Matteo. Another villager interjected from behind, cautiously stepping forward. But he is not Matteo. We saw his photograph later on American news. Marco stared intently. You mean Alex Mitchell? The villagers nodded solemnly. Yes, Alex. He lives here secretly, hiding from something dangerous. Marcos felt his knees weaken. The revelation nearly overwhelming. Alex alive, hiding here in this remote village. The depth of his betrayal felt crushing, but the knowledge offered a critical clue. Philippe might still be alive too, perhaps hiding somewhere nearby, fearful yet surviving. Jenna saw determination ignite fiercely in Marco's eyes. This village was now the center of their search, Alex's hideaway, and perhaps Felipe's refuge. She knew their danger had intensified sharply. Powerful forces would surely be hunting them, desperate to silence their discoveries forever. As the villagers gathered quietly around, faces reflecting concern and fear, Marco stood tall, resolve shining clearly. Take us to Alex, he requested. Firmly, it's time we faced him directly. Jenna watched villagers exchange uneasy glances, aware their lives were balanced precariously on a knife's edge. This remote village was now entangled dangerously in their pursuit of truth. Innocent lives at risk simply because they'd offered kindness. Yet, despite the peril, Jenna felt strangely empowered. They were closer than ever each step brought. Justice nearer, though the cost could become unbearably high. Villagers finally nodded reluctantly, agreeing to lead them discreetly toward Alex's hiding place, sheltered deeply within the remote hills. The air seemed to grow heavier with every step, tension palpable as shadows lengthened around them. Marcos glanced at Jenna silently, an unspoken bond strengthening between them, two strangers now inseparably linked through tragedy, hope, and relentless pursuit of justice. Jenna met his gaze, determination clear in her eyes, silently vowing she would stand beside him. Facing whatever darkness awaited ahead, the path narrowed sharply, villagers pointing toward a modest, isolated house, partially hidden by dense foliage. Marco stepped forward slowly, heart pounding fiercely. The answers they'd long pursued lay waiting within those shadowed walls, the truth about Alex's betrayal, Felipe's fate, and secrets deeper and darker than either could have ever imagined. Justice awaited, hidden behind that lonely door, guarded fiercely by silence and lies. And Marcos knew once they opened that door, nothing would ever be the same again. Marcos and Jenna approached the isolated cabin cautiously, hidden deeply within dense foliage on a steep hillside above San Rafael. Villagers had discreetly guided them here before retreating quickly, anxious to avoid involvement. Standing silently in the fading twilight, Marcos felt his pulse quicken. The modest wooden structure appeared abandoned, yet something intangible hinted at lingering menace. The cabin door creaked open stiffly, dust swirling gently in the evening air. Inside, shadows cloaked every corner, silence heavy and oppressive. Jenna clicked on a small flashlight, illuminating a scene that made Marcos shudder. The room was sparsely furnished, a cot pushed against one wall, a weathered desk cluttered with maps, notebooks, and aged photographs. Marcos stepped forward cautiously, picking up a framed photograph. Alex smiling broadly, arm around Felipe's shoulder during happier times. A wave of anger surged painfully through Marcos, his fingers trembling as he set the photo down again. Jenna sifted carefully through scattered papers. Her expression darkened rapidly as she uncovered handwritten letters, rambling notes filled with disturbing confessions of guilt, paranoia, and twisted justifications. Marcos approached, leaning over her shoulder silently, reading Alex's handwriting. Filled with dark admissions, Sarah knows too much. Philippe suspects. They threaten everything I built. No choice left silence them. Marcos exhaled sharply, stomach twisting painfully. He planned everything, he whispered hoarsely, voice filled with disbelief and disgust. Jenna nodded grimly, moving deeper into the cluttered desk drawers, uncovering even darker truths. Photographs revealed Alex meeting secretly with known criminals. From Newport Beach, exchanging money and stolen artifacts. Smiles cold and calculating. Marcos sank heavily onto the cot, overwhelmed by betrayal. The man he'd trusted, whom Philippe had admired, had manipulated them brutally, coldly willing to sacrifice friendships to hide his criminal secrets. Suddenly, Jenna noticed a small hidden compartment beneath the desk. Carefully prying it open, her heart skipped. A small notebook lay concealed within. Pages filled with Alex's anxious, rambling notes, paranoia spiraling visibly over weeks and months, climaxing in meticulous plans detailing how he'd intended to kill Sarah and Philippe during their dive. Marcos listened numbly as Jenna read aloud, detailing Alex's sinister intent, cutting their oxygen lines underwater, blaming tragic accidents, escaping detection by authorities indifferent to deeper truths. The horror of Alex's betrayal deepened profoundly, leaving Marcos shaking. Suddenly, Marcos' phone vibrated sharply, startling him. An unknown number flashed urgently. He answered hesitantly, breath frozen, heart nearly stopping when he recognized Philippe's shaky voice on the other end. "Marcos?" Philippe whispered anxiously, his voice faint and trembling. "Is that you?" Emotion flooded Marcos, tears stinging his eyes. "Philippe, you're alive. Where are you?" Philippe hesitated painfully, his breathing shallow and rapid. "Not safe to say. Alex tried to kill us. I barely escaped. Sarah, she's gone, Marcos. I saw everything." Marcos gripped the phone tightly, struggling to steady his voice. "Philippe, please, let me help you." Silence lingered painfully before Philippe finally murmured directions softly, urging Marcos alone to a hidden spot near the village outskirts. "Don't tell anyone else," Philippe pleaded urgently. "Especially Jenna. We can't trust anyone." Marcos hesitated, conflicted, glancing at Jenna carefully organizing evidence nearby. But the desperation in Philippe's voice left no doubt he must obey. That night, Marcos secretly left Jenna sleeping, silently slipping from their lodging. He reached the isolated meeting point, pulse racing with fear and anticipation. Philippe appeared quietly from the shadows, thin, pale, haunted but alive. The brothers embraced fiercely, tears streaming silently as emotions overwhelmed them both. Philippe trembled violently, clinging desperately to Marcos. "I thought you'd stopped looking," Philippe admitted painfully. Marcos shook his head emphatically. "Never. I'd never abandon you." Philippe recounted slowly, painfully, every traumatic detail of their last dive. Underwater, Alex had suddenly turned hostile, aggressively cutting Sarah's oxygen line, holding her down brutally as she struggled. Philippe described his desperate fight, managing barely to escape Alex's furious grasp, hiding deep within an underwater cave, helplessly watching as Sarah slipped tragically away. Marcos listened in horror, heartbreaking for Sarah, his brother, himself all victims of Alex's ruthless betrayal. "I hid, Marcos," Philippe confessed shakily. "I couldn't face you, knowing Sarah died and I survived. The guilt. It destroyed me." Marcos gripped Philippe's shoulder firmly. "This isn't your fault. Alex betrayed us all." Philippe glanced nervously around, voice dropping further. "Alex won't stop. He'll kill anyone who threatens him." Back at the lodging, Jenna awoke abruptly, noticing Marcos missing. Worried, she instinctively checked her phone. An anonymous message suddenly flashed. Onto her screen, A single chilling sentence. I know you found me. Tell Marcos silence by survival, otherwise Philippe dies first, then him. Alex Jenna's blood turned icy. Heart pounding, she realized Alex had been watching them carefully, aware of every step closer they'd taken toward uncovering his crimes. Outside, Marcos carefully led Philippe back toward the lodging, determined to protect him. Jenna met them at the door urgently, expression grave. We've been compromised, Jenna whispered sharply, showing them Alex's threat. Philippe paled immediately, terror evident. He'll find us, Philippe murmured, voice trembling. Alex always finds what he hunts. Marcos stood firmly, determination hardening clearly in his eyes. Then we fight. No more running. Jenna glanced at both brothers silently, feeling profound respect for their bravery despite overwhelming danger. But deep inside, fear stirred strongly. Alex, ruthless and resourceful, wouldn't stop until he'd silenced everyone. Meanwhile, hidden nearby, Alex watched quietly, rage burning fiercely. He'd meticulously built a new life here, invisible yet powerful. Now Marcos threatened everything, Alex's secrets, his survival. Late that night, Marcos, Jenna, and Philippe silently reviewed their limited options. Alex's threat loomed ominously, forcing desperate choices. Philippe's survival remained there. Priority, yet justice demanded exposure. Marcos knew confronting Alex directly was unavoidable. Suddenly, Marcos' phone lit up again sharply. Hands shaking, he opened another message from an unknown number, a brief, chilling warning. Last chance, Marcos. Silence or death. Choose wisely. Alex Marcos exhaled slowly, meeting Jenna's resolute gaze. No choice remained. This path had become irreversible. They'd uncovered truths so dark that retreat was impossible. Justice required risk, yet Marcos felt strangely empowered. Together, united, they'd face Alex's threats head-on, determined to expose his betrayal fully. No matter how dangerous the consequences. Alex, however, would stop at nothing. Hidden deeply within shadows, watching closely, he calculated coldly his next devastating move. Marcos had forced his hand. Now Alex vowed silently to destroy them all. Justice, betrayal, survival, the lines blurred dangerously. Marcos, Jenna, and Philippe stood firmly against overwhelming darkness, their courage tested beyond limits. Ahead lay confrontation, revelations, and a reckoning long overdue, and Alex Mitchell waited patiently in darkness, ready to strike lethally, promising no escape. His chilling threat lingered hauntingly, a ruthless reminder that their fight was far from over. In a secluded room, Alex Mitchell paced restlessly, desperation eating away at the fragile edges of his mind. His hands trembled slightly, betraying a tension he struggled to suppress. Every carefully constructed illusion was collapsing rapidly, and panic surged within him. He was a man on the run, cornered by the very people he'd once considered disposable pawns. They forced this on me, Alex whispered to himself, rationalizing his actions. Sarah wouldn't stop. Philippe kept prying. I had no choice. In his twisted logic, betrayal became self-defense, murder justified as necessity. His heart raced erratically, paranoia gripping tighter. He quickly packed essentials into a worn duffel bag, his thoughts frenzied and erratic. Escape was his only remaining option. But Alex knew the truth deep down. He couldn't run forever. Marcos was relentless. Jenna Cole had uncovered far too much. Felipe's survival threatened everything. At sunrise, Alex sped recklessly along narrow coastal roads toward the southern tip of Baja California, eyes constantly flicking to his rearview mirror, haunted by ghosts of his own creation. Suddenly, headlights appeared behind him, a familiar Jeep, speeding determinedly closer. Marcos was here, Jenna and Philippe at his side. Alex slammed the accelerator desperately, the winding road becoming perilously narrow, cliffs dropping sharply. Into the crashing ocean below. Inside the pursuing jeep, tension gripped Marcos. Philippe gripped the back seat, eyes fixed on Alex's fleeing car. Jenna drove skillfully, her determination evident. Marcos felt conflicted rage battling sorrow. Alex had been a friend, a trusted mentor to Philippe, now revealed as a ruthless traitor. He won't escape, Jenna vowed grimly. Steering expertly through dangerous curves, the chase intensified, cars weaving precariously along rugged cliffs, gravel skittering towards steep drops. Finally, Alex's car skidded violently, tires squealing. As it halted abruptly at the edge of a sheer precipice, overlooking turbulent waves below, Marcos and Jenna approached cautiously, Felipe close behind, heart pounding anxiously. Alex emerged slowly, eyes wild, gripping a small handgun shakily. "Stay back," Alex shouted desperately, voice cracked with fear and anger. Marcos stepped forward calmly, courage masking deep pain. "Why, Alex? Philippe trusted you. We trusted you." Alex laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Trust? You were blind." Sarah dug too deep. Philippe asked too many questions. "They threatened my life. What choice did I have?" Felipe's voice broke the tense silence, filled with sorrow and betrayal. "You were my friend, Alex. I admired you. You destroyed everything." Alex hesitated briefly, pain flickering in his eyes. "I never wanted this," he whispered, trembling. "But survival demands sacrifice." "Not at the cost of lives," Marcos responded, firmly, stepping closer despite the threat. "You chose greed over friendship, betrayal over loyalty." Alex's grip on the gun tightened, hands shaking violently. "Stay away," he screamed, panic overwhelming his senses. Suddenly, Jenna raised a small recorder, playing Alex's earlier threats allowed his ruthless words echoing across the cliffside. Alex flinched, eyes widening in horror, confronted fully by his own brutal truths. In that moment of hesitation, distant sirens pierced sharply through the tension. Mexican police and Coast Guard vehicles appeared swiftly, surrounding the cliffside. Dramatically, Alex's shoulders slumped, defeat crashing visibly through him. Authorities quickly secured Alex, leading him toward waiting vehicles. He glanced briefly at Marcos and Philippe, bitterness replaced by deep regret. Marcos watched silently, grief mingling with relief. Justice, painfully overdue, had finally arrived. In the days following Alex's arrest, media flooded Newport Beach, seeking answers. Philippe bravely recounted the tragedy, the betrayal by Alex, Sarah's heroism, and his own survival and guilt, finally revealing the painful truth. Weeks later, a heartfelt memorial honored Sarah Bennett's courage and compassion. Marcos and Philippe spoke emotionally, highlighting her bravery, sacrifice, and enduring inspiration. Jenna quietly reflected, finally feeling peace after confronting past traumas. Afterward, Marcos and Philippe walked the shoreline, reaffirming their strengthened bond. Jenna, too, found closure, placing Sarah's photograph beside that of her lost partner, Mark, honoring both lives. Over months, life gradually returned to normal. Marcos, Felipe, and Jenna often reunited at Sarah's memorial, transformed by their shared journey. They learned justice demanded courage, forgiveness brought healing, and resilience emerged strongest from tragedy. Together, they honored Sarah Bennett's legacy, carrying her spirit forward, forever remembered and deeply respected.